Hello, and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask, what moves us? Or more accurately, what's going to move us in future?
We look at debates, themes, and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of What Moves Us, podcast where we talk about what's going to move us in future. On the line with us today, we have Johanna. Say hello, Johanna.
Hello, Johanna.
Hello. And we also have Johan from PiPcall,
Hi there.
member of the Rail Innovation Group, and we are very excited to talk to him in a second. And we also have Miles Allcock, who is a contractor who potentially will use the product of PiPcall. So
Hello.
look forward to this conversation. Let us jump right in with a question. Oh, well, actually, Johan, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about PiPcall?
Thank you very much, Liam. So, yes, my name is Johan. I'm head of sales at PiPcall. PiPcall, we're an organization that specializes in mobile communications specifically for business. We've been in business for the last 15 years, a UK-based company. And what we're focusing on at the moment is providing a call recording solution to the rail industry to assist with the new regulatory requirements that are coming in March next year.
Great, thanks. And could we just dwell on the regulatory requirements? Let's probably set the scene for what the product does.
Yeah, no problem. So everyone can access the Network Rail portal and download the documents, but there's a new regulation that has come into play, or let's say the old regulation has been adjusted and adapted to the modern times. In March next year, all trackside communication, all safety critical communication, or let's say all verbal communication, must be recorded, not just from the Network Rail side, but from the contractor's side working on the rail. Any communications that are happening trackside needs to be recorded. And where we specialize in is filling some of the gaps, because there are a lot of times when mobile phones are being used when people communicate trackside. So what we specialize in is a mobile phone call recording solution to assist people that are working trackside and making sure that they are covered from a regulatory perspective, and that there's an audit trail in case something does go wrong, that they can actually provide information about what was agreed, what was said, and make sure that all parties are protected, basically.
So, I mean, I might direct this question to Miles, who's been in the situation, but how is it that this doesn't happen already? When we're talking about safety critical, you'd assume that this is all just done.
So safety critical has been around, for a long time, and the communications recordings of signalers and the electronic control rooms, that's always been recorded, because obviously if there's any train events or any accidents, incidents, then obviously it needs to be recorded what's going on. So that has been around. What the rail industry is now doing is actually expanding this to safety critical functions, i.e. ES functions, machine controllers, and costs is, on the railway. So I've been on the industry in the industry about 10 years. And this year was the first time I had an actual incident. So it made me actually sit back and take stock and find out, where I'd gone wrong, if was it my fault? And one of the things was when I looked at, call recording, was my initial concern was being monitored. Obviously the individuals' mindsets, that they don't want to be recorded. But having experienced a recent incident, I now realize that call recording is a great aid. And then, like I say, I've sat down and just looked at call recording, and I just jotted a couple of points down. So obviously, the key things for me are protection for all parties. Call recording provides an accurate reflection of events, protecting both individuals and organizations. It promotes clear communications, ABC principle, which ensures conversations are accurate, brief, and clear. Reduces miscommunications, encourages individuals to share information correctly in the right format. It also supports two-way understanding. Any misunderstanding can be clarified on the call recording immediately by requesting a repeat or a correction of the actual instructions. It also overcomes reluctance to self-record, because obviously there is different options with PiPcall where you could have, apart from having the app of call recording, you could also have a PiPcall eSIM, which is then removing the use of somebody's personal mobile phone, because most of the people in the rail industry use their own mobile. So, but they are reluctant to have recording on their own mobile. And that's about it really from me. And like I say, I've experienced it firsthand with an incident, and I am quite quite positive of the industry bringing in call recording now going forward.
I think sort of like that insight from your own personal experience is really interesting, because I didn't realize that so many people use their own phone, because I presumed if you're out on the track you would have a company phone as part of personal issue or whatever. So how does Johan, how does PipCall help with sort of like overcome some of those behavior and nervousness about having recording on your phone?
Good question. I think when you look at call recording solutions, typically you have large companies that provide a call recording app, but it's a VoIP-based system. When you're working trackside or in remote areas, VoIP is not the best way forward when it comes to clarity of the calls. What makes PiPcall quite unique is our calls are not over the internet. Our calls are actually over the back of the cellular network. So it's all mobile network calls rather than VoIP. Secondly, when you download the app or you get the eSIM from us, it's like having a phone in a phone. That's what PIP stands for. It's a phone within your phone. So it creates separation in the sense that when you're calling from the app, you're not presenting your personal mobile number to somebody. When you call through the app, you're presenting a second number, which can be a landline or mobile, your choice. The second thing is it doesn't record calls from your native dialer that you do when you're calling friends, family, or things. When you're calling through the app or you're calling through the SIM, only those calls are recorded. So it creates a nice separation for somebody that does use their personal phone. It also has a lot of other features that some of the other solutions don't have. For example, call monitoring. One of the things that's going to need to happen is calls are going to need to be listened to. People are going to need to be trained, and their calls are going to need to be monitored. And our solution does allow for that. The third thing is that the way that calls are stored needs to be GDPR compliant. So with PipCall, our calls are stored centrally in the cloud. It's stored within Amazon S3 storage, so it's also admin controlled in terms of access, and the calls can be time stamped. So you're able to search, retrieve, and access calls, and monitor and even analyze those calls and use them in the future. So there are some call recording solutions that Apple have or Samsung themselves, but those calls are stored on the device locally, which is also not ideal for a solution like this. So it just so happens that the way that we've designed a solution is actually quite a perfect fit for the rail industry in terms of what it requires and how it creates the separation. So you can have this app on your personal phone or your work phone.
And I mean, I think sort of like you mentioned about GDPR compliance, and I guess with cyber attacks and things that have been in the news in the last few months with some quite high profile companies, I guess that layer of security is really important in the rail industry.
Yeah, it is. And then that's why we chose Amazon S3 storage as the solution or the way to store our information centrally in the cloud. It's one of the most trusted cloud storage data centers that you could use. So yes, we definitely wanted to make sure that it is done in such a way that it complies with all the regulations and also provides a level of confidence in terms of security.
Just a question. So I was speaking today from Birmingham. Half the journey here, I couldn't do anything because I couldn't get connectivity. How do you cope with no zones along the track?
Well, there are two things. So typically, again, the reason why you didn't get connection is because you're relying on the internet there, whereas our calls rely on cellular calling. But we do have, for people that work in very remote areas where you might have an EE SIM and you work in an area where EE is not that great, or you might have an O2 SIM and you're working in an area where O2 is not that great. So for people that really want to make sure that they have the best coverage, we also have multi-network SIMs that connect to whichever network is the strongest. So it is something that we've put together to be able to assist with that. Because again, um, if you have a SIM that's specific to a network, there are some areas where the coverage is not that great. So we can overcome that by providing multi-network SIM.
And just to add to that, Johan, you've also got trackside fixed line telephones in certain locations as well. So there's always normally a backup, and they are recorded anyway because that's part of the national network rail communication system. So there is that as well.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to, for example, contractors like Miles, I've been speaking to the Rail Industry Contractors Association, and I think one of the things about PiPcall, because we're not as big as some of the very large players within the call recording space, we have a team of developers, and we're able to be flexible and adapt to the requirements of companies. I was speaking to the chairman of Gericke, and he was talking to me about some of the challenges, because if you think about a contractor, if you're a tier 1 supplier or a tier 2 supplier and you have some contractors that work with you, those contractors aren't going to be working with you permanently. They're going to maybe work 2 days a week, and then somebody else will work 2 days, the other 2 days. So what we've done is we've created something called a floating license. So that person can actually get a license from us. That organization can get a license from us, issue it to the contractor coming in, and then when that contractor finishes after 2 days, they can reissue that same license to somebody else rather than having to buy licenses for everybody. And that's just some of the ways that we, as a company, try to really listen to the requirements, the needs, and not just use a one-size-fits-all approach. It's something that we really. I challenge any organization to come to us with a challenge that they might not be able to solve elsewhere, and you'll find that with us, that's what we get excited about is working together with you as a partner and try and create a custom solution so that it actually fits the purpose that it's required for.
So you almost preempted what I was going to ask you a bit there, because I was going to get into sort of like, how long have you been working with rail, and what have you done to sort of like tailor your product to what rail needs are, and sort of like how have you adapted over that period?
So we haven't even been in rail that long. Probably you're looking at about 6 to 7 months. The first experience I had was going to Rail Live. I don't know, you probably all know about the Rail Live exhibition, which was fantastic, and we got to meet all the different players there. We've connected with the RSSB. We've connected with the Rail Innovation Group, which is this lovely podcast right here. We've connected with the Rail Industry Association, as well as the Rail Industry Contractors Group. So within that short space of time, we've connected with a lot of the let's say stakeholders and the players within the arena, and we've done pretty much a crash course in trying to understand the industry and the needs. I've downloaded all the documents around this requirement. I've spoken to the gentleman that wrote the requirements. We're already doing trials for tier 1 contractors, so that is pretty much we're in a good position right now, and I think we're very excited about working with the industry to try and help cover all the little, let's say, black spots that are not being looked after at the moment. We're really there to assist, so that's where we are.
So can I ask a question? It might be to either Johan or Miles, but do you sense that people just assume that their calls are being recorded now, or do you think that the knowledge that calls are being recorded might change people's behaviors?
I think from a personal, working within the industry, like I said before, most contractors are actually, they use their own phone, so they're not recorded. But this obviously legislation is coming in March, and again, you're going to have, it's a case of, and I spoke to Johan about this, it's about the mindset of individuals. People do not like the idea of recording, but it's an industry standard that's coming in. So there is options available. But again, it does reflect what goes on. And I think it's probably one of the best things that they've actually brought in the last few years, actually. Well, when it comes in next year.
But I guess that's from my non-expert point of view on this aspect, you would assume that part of the messaging to frontline users would be that it protects them because they've got proof of what they said as part of the safety case.
It's both ways. It protects them, and it also protects, communication's a two-way process. So you're receiving information and you're transmitting information. So at the end of the day, you've got to make sure that the right information is transmitted, to you and vice versa. So it is key that it's clear and concise. So
Sorry,
go on.
please carry on.
No, go on. Yeah, okay.
I was just going to say the one thing that I've noticed by engaging with the industry is it's surprising how many organizations are not aware of these changes, in terms of the new regulations that come into play. And we're busy speaking to Network Rail to see if we can assist as well with spreading that message and getting people educated. We're doing massive PR campaigns. We're engaging with basically all the stakeholders. We're engaging with the trade unions. We're engaging with everybody to try and get the message out there, because if you think about it, March is just around the corner. And if you want to, you're not just going to go and pick the first solution that you see. You want to go through a process. We do offer free trials for anyone that is interested. But really, it is true what you said in terms of do organizations know whether they are being recorded or not? There are a lot of areas where recording does happen, but there are certain areas which, when I speak to an organization and they say, oh yeah, no, we've got call recording in place, you might have, but there are instances that you're not recorded, and especially when it comes to mobile phones. And in that situation, that's why we're here, is to fill those gaps where something might happen, and because in that instance there wasn't a recording, something big could happen. You could lose your contract. You could lose your ability to work with a large tier 1 contractor because you didn't have the relevant recordings in place. So that's really the message we want to get out.
And I think just to add to that is, again, from my experience, was I'm not going to go into the details of the incident, but that was investigated, but there was no call recording on my incident. If there had been a call recording on my incident, it would have been resolved a lot quicker. Instead, it took over 12 weeks to actually investigate it and obviously clear myself. But again, if that call recording had been in place, then it would have been cleared up a lot quicker. I wouldn't have lost it. It wouldn't have been a financial impact to me as well, because obviously I couldn't work at the time.
Yeah, so it kind of protects.
Yes, it
I
does.
understand the message. It protects all users.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring us on slightly to talk about the company, because you mentioned about the fact that it's a legislation that's going to come in March, and then I think many of our listeners will raise an eyebrow by the fact that it would have to be procured by March, which can be difficult for some large national organizations to procure things that quickly. But the message I think that I picked out from there was that for the suppliers to rail, they're the ones that also need to comply with this, and they're the ones that need to sharpen up and get their systems ready for this deadline in March.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Network Rail side, and then you've got your contractor side. And within the contractor space, you've got your tier 1s, you've got your tier 2s, you've got your specialist contractors. And then you've got a lot of individual independent contractors like Miles. So we are dealing with some of the industries and the Rail Industry Contractors Association. We've got trials going on with some of the tier 1s. We've had good reviews, but it is a process that people should look at and start investigating straight away. and just do research and just see where are the gaps, if there are any, and what do we need to do to fill those gaps. We've got some ebooks, as I mentioned, that we've written in terms of the new regulations and how we actually fill those gaps. So that's also available for anyone that is interested, and we can share that.
Excellent. We'll put links to that in the podcast notes. I've just been thinking about this while you've been talking about rail, but as a general thing for the company, we often ask, as sort of one of our later questions is about culture within the company. But I'm going to use that to culture and sort of how you've come up with solution development as a small company. But as a small company, are you just looking at rail, or do you see applications to this across?
I think the exciting thing about anything that is regulated, whether that's finance, whether that's construction, whether that's rail, whether that's, there's a lot of regulated industries. And I think best practice is always even law, when there are two parties discussing something and afterwards there could be a dispute, having call recording in place is always going to be the best practice. Being able to access recordings and safeguard your side of any contract negotiations, any business agreements, it's something that can be applied everywhere. Of course, within finance, you've got to have MiFID II compliance. So there's certain other elements you have to be able to provide a solution that is right for the industry. But yeah, I think call recording in general is something that can be applied to most industries. And we don't just specialize in call recording. PiPcall, we specialize in mobile communications for business. If you think about the mobile phone, not so much all the apps, all these additional features, but the actual calling experience has never improved since the beginning. If you look at your mobile, when somebody calls you, it's not really appropriate for business. You can't transfer that mobile call to somebody else in your business.
Right.
If you're busy, most of the time you can't have something that captures the voicemail and sends you a transcribed email or a voice note so that you can read that in your own time. There's a lot of features that we provide to a mobile phone that makes it appropriate for business. And that's really what we're trying to do at PiPcall is revolutionize is a big word, but we're trying to modernize the way that business communications are done over the mobile phone. Because a mobile phone, everyone has it, everyone takes it everywhere. It's the one thing everyone carries with them. And so what we're trying to do is create the calling experience that is suitable for business rather than it just being the same as a standard average call.
I mean, I'm fascinated myself, yes, because at the end of this Zoom call, Zoom will send me an AI summary of the call. But if we'd spoken on a mobile phone, that would just be it. There's nothing.
Unless you have PiPcall's call recording solution to do the same.
And I think Liam, I think just one key thing is obviously you've got, if it was an emergency call, they're already recorded it on any emergency calls. If it was a signaller on the railway or the ECO, they're already recorded. This is now just filling the rest of the gap of the actual contractors of the actual network rail users. So it's just making sure that everything's recorded then end to end. So it's just evolution of the mobile,
Yeah.
basically.
And it seems an obvious gap and an obvious solution. So
Yeah.
wish you all the luck. You'll have to come back in March and tell us about how many users have subscribed and whether everyone is compliant. And then keep a black book of the people who aren't compliant so you can target them.
No, that would be great if we can do that, to be honest.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time today. We will look forward to hearing from you soon. And yes, in the show notes will be links to the documents referenced. But for today, thank you, Miles, Johan, and Johanna. We'll speak to you soon. Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Until next time.